Normally the process of doing a you buy it, I play it video is one of spending a few hours playing a game, taking a video of my playing it, and then posting that video on YouTube. The spirit of the activity is to broaden my world of games, and I genuinely want to write criticism about new and interesting weirdness, but the reality is that I'm often given terrible stuff that I just have to kinda make entertaining for myself. Sometimes that's fun, and sometimes it isn't. One Finger Death Punch is the first you buy it, I play it game in a long while to make me sit down and really think about how this game could be this intriguing despite having so much that might turn me off about it. This video is mostly going to be about my figuring out why I get so much enjoyment out of a thing that I find pretty droll on most levels. So buckle in for that Funtime festivity. Simon Parkin reviewed One Finger Death Punch over at Eurogamer way back in 2013, and he had this to say about it. Quote, "What could so easily have become a disposable, short-lived distraction grows into a deep and complex series of tests of nerve, timing, and dexterity as Silver Dollar Games twists its central premise into unusual and creative new shapes." Unquote. If, for some reason, you were here to get a really short and sweet summary of what this game is about, that's it for you. It's not more or less complicated than that. The system of looking at the screen, reading patterns of right and left, and then executing on those patterns feels exquisite. If you're paying attention to the footage, you can see that the only thing going on is smashing buttons in a vaguely careful manner. I hit the X button on my 360 controller when an enemy is coming from the left, and I mash the B button when they come from the right. Sometimes there are enemies with little bars under them and they switch sides, so I have to sequence my button presses. When anything comes within range of my smashing hands and feet of fury, I take them down. Sometimes it gets more complicated than that. There are weapons and extended attack zones and different level types, but all of those different subtypes are afforded by the basic combat loop that the entire game rests on. Unlike a contemporary Call of Duty or Mortal Kombat game, One Finger Death Punch is an abstraction of combat that still holds something from the original. In his book Persuasive Games, Ian Bogo sort of talks about this using the word procedural representation. There's a process called fighting that gets modeled as a more abstract process of whacking two buttons to pretend you're in a Hong Kong action flick. It's the process of abstraction that makes the game so engaging, and we'll get back to the Hong Kong action flick in just a minute. Abstraction is a beautiful idea in games and art that has a really great set of theories around it going back a couple thousand years, and I'm going to avoid all of that. Instead, I just want to suggest that taking One Finger Death Punch any closer to the quote-unquote real would make it unbearable. The almost rhythm of the button presses makes sense when they're put in relation to a stick figure that has no presence in the world. No one can say, "Hey there, game designers, didn't you know that stick figures don't move that way in real life?" There's a freedom abstracting the visual elements of the game from anything real, and the fighting mechanic works solely because erratic button presses maintain something of the visuality of, say, a Jackie Chan film. Watch a martial arts film. My memory of them is that they're smooth action with actors cleanly moving from one enemy to the next, but watching them is a much different feeling. The camera is cutting smoothly, but the fighting is quick staccato motion with pauses and breaks and chases neatly slotted into the spaces between fists meeting faces. To abstract that out and to remove cinematic cutting from the process leaves you with the staccato breakdown of physical violence. One Finger Death Punch captures the action of martial arts without grabbing the cinematics of it. It's notable that the moments where the game is trying to reach representation of real-world things is where it falls down the most. The screaming man with an Asian accent that serves as an announcer is 1 part 1980s announcer and 9 parts racial stereotype.
Silver medal awarded. New skill unlocked.
Its attempt to use slow motion to make the game feel more like a martial arts film just falls flat and ruins the pace of gameplay. Ultimately making a strange, abstracted fighter is 10 times more interesting than anything they purposefully put in to add to the aesthetic. What separates One Finger Death Punch from similar games like Deep Dungeons of Doom is not mechanics, it's a feeling. That feeling gets supported by how I'm encouraged to interact with the game. Deep Dungeons of Doom wants me to get involved in some superficial way with a story, a coherent fantasy aesthetics, and a particular mode of humor. One Finger Death Punch just wants me to hit 2 buttons. It wants me to execute those moves, it wants me to become a pattern-matching machine, and just like in Guitar Hero, I enjoy becoming that machine. Being a martial arts machine feels good.